was then getting past the 10 million phase and now starting to really think about channels. This is when you have to say, okay, one channel is not enough. Now I need to start rethinking multiple channels. Few things that for me were valuable in retrospect. Every go-to-market channel takes over 9 months before it turns repeatable. So just one, expect it. Two, give it the time that it's going to take. The only way you can give it the time that it's going to take is if you pick very carefully what those 3 things are. That might work. So just run an experiment engine and then decide which go-to-market channels are the right channels to go work on. The go-to-market stuff is common sense. So this was my biggest learning. I would go into these conversations and people would say these things like MedPick, like, and they would just, it would all sound so complex. And then, I learned about it and I was like, okay, so you're actually telling me that you talk to this person and you understand what their problems are, and then you ask them how to quantify what their problems are, and then you give them a solution to their problems. It's really common sense, right? So just one note, I've seen this especially with with technical founders where, these things sound overwhelming. So just read, become a student of it, learn the stuff. Most likely you will be able to find the loopholes in a way that no one else will. This is also the time where everyone will start using this word. This is especially when you start hiring your, leaders, and they'll come and start telling you things like, this is the industry standard. This is the average in the industry. And then now you as a founder have self-doubt. You're like, am I being too aggressive here? Is this not possible? So the one biggest learning that I had was do not accept industry standard as an answer. I'll give you some examples. We started investing in analyst relations pretty early as a company. The reason I started doing that was because we lost one deal. We were very close, and we lost that deal. I was like, okay, this can never happen to us again. So we'll invest in this thing. And people told us, oh, analysts are such a long cycle. If you start doing analyst relations, it's going to take you 5 years before you show up on a report. The first report that we showed up on, we were a top right in the quadrant. Again, that's not, it takes a lot to make that happen, but it's possible. In retrospect, if I had just accepted that it wouldn't be possible, I don't think we would have gotten there. So just, I think, keeping that as a core note. Hire leaders very carefully. In our early days, I tried to hire I was running a CR. Actually, my first 2 executive searches were a CRO search and a CM search. And I ran them for quite some time, and I did not find someone that I loved. And I decided to make a very counterintuitive decision at the time to say I'm not going to continue to, I'm not going to hire someone if I don't love them. I think that was the best decision I ever made. In retrospect, if I look back and I look back at all the self-doubt, and everyone I would meet would be like, Prukalpa, you need an executive team. Come on, and I remember feeling oh my God, am I just really bad at hiring these people? Why am I not able to find someone I love? But in retrospect, that was almost the best decision that I made, and that took us all the way to our 25 million point. I was a super counterintuitive individual. It was someone who didn't come from the data space. It was someone who didn't come from enterprise. It was someone who, it was super counterintuitive, but just felt this was someone who, I'll give you an example of what happened. So I get on a call. It was a referral from somebody, and I come off the call. It was just a first introduction call. And he responded to me after that with a long email. And the long email had, he looked at our values on our website, and he's like, hey, I think these are the things that we need to tell differently about our values. He's like, I thought about our strategy. Here's all the things that I think we should be thinking about. After my first call, first 30 minutes, it was somebody who took the time to go deep and actually come back to me with things that, and I was like, oh my God, this is a 120% leader. This is the kind of person that I want to work with. And so again, rare, but you will find these people, and you have to keep looking, and so just don't compromise until you find them. The last one, I think this one I've heard a lot about Atlan, so we put out this note that year, which is that best products win the race, and companies that win the narrative win the championship. And so we made a very targeted effort to say, how do we go win the narrative? And that meant a bunch of different things. For example, our first Snowflake Summit, my only goal to the team was everybody who walks in should know us. There were 5,000 people in the conference. Everybody should know us. We did a flash mob outside the keynote. And they threw us out after that. But then in the evening, the CMO of Snowflake came to me and she was like, oh my God, I love that, right? And so we just did these things that were a little out there, but got us just a lot of brand visibility and a lot of narrative wins that then helped us in that phase. So just again, I don't think you have the choice in today's world to be able to be just the best product or the best go-to-market or the best narrative. You kind of have to go do all of those things. There's a way to do this in a way that's super cheap. And it's like creativity can't be bought. Yeah, and I'll kind of close soon. The last one is the 25 to 50 million journey. I think this is the phase where you have to go from building the product to building the company that builds the product. And you have to almost think about the company as the product and not the product as the product. Personally, for me, this was one of the biggest transitions that we had to make as a company. Few things in this phase. Culture. You now start hiring a lot of people. They all come from very different places. And I always think culture is actually not about, like, at this point, like, you as a founder, when you go on stage and say anything, it doesn't mean anything. It only means, like, how people show up day to day, how their managers show up. Like, that's what culture is. I also believe, this is a Patrick Collison quote, which stayed with me, which is that great cultures are meaningfully differentiated. They don't regress to the mean. And in this phase, actually, people start pulling you to, like, try to regress you to the mean. Imagine an engineer who worked in Spotify if they went into Facebook. And the opposite, like the culture, the operating models of these companies are so different. And from there, what we did was we basically went through this exercise of saying, okay, like, what is our operating model? We always had values. We were a very value-driven company. So, for example, we have a value called being straightforward at Atlan. And then people would say, okay, so I have feedback for a team member on another team. Should I go tell them directly? Should I go tell my manager? Should I tell my manager to tell their manager? It actually, like, shows up very differently, like, on a day-to-day basis, just depending on which culture somebody came from or grew up in. And so we did a few things. One thing we did was we orchestrated this, like, customer, like, just one very simple decision-making hierarchy: customer greater than company, greater than team, greater than me. Any decision at Atlan, this is a decision-making framework. If at any point you're in doubt, this is the framework. Do this, run with that. And then from there, what we started doing, we actually wrote like a 70-page leadership handbook, which now is like a bunch of AI agents. And what we did was we converted these into almost dilemmas that people face. So I go back to the customer greater than company, greater than team, greater than me. I have never met a founder who has ever told me that, or actually any team member who's like, that doesn't make sense. Of course it makes sense, right? Like, just think about it. If a company exists, customer greater than company, greater than team, greater than me, it's obvious. Not so much. What happens on, like, let's say a Friday night, a customer calls you, and they say, like, I have this really important thing on a Monday morning, and I really need you to, like, pull this thing together. And you know, as a manager, that your team member has, like, some really important thing that weekend, right? Like, you know, it's like this kid's 16th birthday or something like that. What do? Do you call them and do you tell them, sorry, dude, like, you need to work this weekend? Do you say, like, what do you do? And in this is what I realized becomes challenging for people, because their personal biases become the decision that the company ends up making. So we decided that we're just going to make this, like, super, like, Atlan's operating model is this. If you're a manager at Atlan, this happens. First, you call the customer. You make sure this is really a big deal. If it does, call the team, tell them transparently what the situation is, ask them if they could work that weekend. And 3, as a manager, you show up. You have to be there and you have to be working the weekend. That is Atlan's policy. That's how Atlan does this. 100 companies out there in the world can do 100 different things. This is how we do it. And that helped a lot in terms of, like, just how we codified how people should act. And every time we saw people having dilemmas, this was in coaching conversations and so on, we started kind of, like, codifying this. And that helped kind of, like, scale us through this phase. And we started, like, we talk a lot about talent density at Atlan. This was a time when we said, can we also build a company that has the most care density in the world? The last phase, this is the phase we're in right now. And I've been laying the foundation of what it takes to build a compound company. And so the question we started laying for ourselves was, like, well, what does it take to build an iconic company? If you want to build a company that is enduring and can last, like, what makes these companies unique? And if you study most of these companies, you'll realize there's a couple of things. They're platforms, not products. They have multiple SKUs. They have multiple go-to-market motions. They have really large TAMs. And they have incredible talent and care density. And they have a very missionary team. And so we, about a year ago, started laying the foundation of, well, how do we go become a compound company? And the way I like to think of it is you kind of start stacking growth curves. And you start almost stacking S-curves one on top of the other. You have to be a company that becomes good at go-to-market scale, and you also have to become a company that's really good at launching new products to the market. And so now we actually have this, I call it like a new products go-to-market factory, which specifically runs this phase of problem value fit to product market fit. And their goal is actually to scrap things that don't work. And they're searching for truth and not traction. And only when things get to traction, they move it into the next phase as we scale. I'm going to leave you with, and this is, take this with a pinch of salt, that we're still very much in this phase. There's some early thoughts as we figure this out. Building the muscle of taking new products is really hard in an existing company. Founder-like talent needs founder-like roles. This is the kind of stuff that founders are great at doing. Something we think a lot about is how do we create a home for founders? How do we create a home for founder density in the company? So for example, in our growth in the company, normal companies have 2 growth tracks. There's a management track, which is you grow to be a leader. There's a professional track, you become like an architect. We actually have a 3rd track, which is a founder track. And this is for people who actually just want the biggest, meatiest problems that they can have. And they're just like, every year, give me the biggest problem, give me autonomy, give me the ability to go solve this problem. And we look at these people from a growth perspective. They're given the same, like just the way we've structured the company is so that we can have more founders over time. And we give them both from like the ability, the way we structure their comp to the way that we set up the structure is to create more founder-like talent in the company. I think in this phase, the way I think about it is there's always a small startup somewhere that's disrupting you. So can you be faster and better? And how do you start building an ecosystem? And in this world, we're really going beyond like, how do you also reimagine everything in an AI native world?